The fall lasted 3 seconds, maybe 4, long enough for Lieutenant Diana Cross to register the betrayal, the push, the way Jackson's eyes held no remorse as gravity claimed her. Long enough to understand she was supposed to die here, on this God-forsaken mountain. Her body eventually discovered and written off as another training accident in bad weather. Long enough to decide that wasn't happening. Her shoulder struck rock first, the impact detonating pain through her torso as momentum tried to carry her over the narrow ledge. Fingers clawed at ice-coated stone, finding impossible purchase. She hung there, boot dangling over a 1,000-foot drop, lungs screaming, ribs probably cracked. Above, voices drifted down through swirling snow. See anything? Nothing. Storms covering everything. Confirm it. In this weather? It's a 1,000-foot drop. She's gone. Diana stayed motionless as their footsteps retreated. Blood pooled beneath her temple where Jackson had struck her with his rifle. The December wind clawed at her tactical gear, stealing precious body heat. She had maybe 3 hours before hypothermia shut her down permanently. She pulled herself onto the ledge. 18 hours earlier, Diana had stood at the base of Sentinel Ridge, reviewing mission parameters with professional detachment. Standard security inspection of a decommissioned Cold War facility. Routine enough that Colonel Victor Kane had assigned 3 civilian contractors to supplement her team. Former military, all of them. Clean backgrounds, proper clearances. Jackson, the ex-ranger with the shaved head and dead eyes. Rivera, slender and watchful. Bennett, red-bearded and carrying extra communications equipment. Storm's coming in fast. Kane's voice crackled through her radio from the command post 5 miles away. At 69, the colonel remained sharp as razors, his decades in special operations evident in every clipped syllable. You've got 30 minutes before visibility drops to 0, Diana acknowledged, leading her team toward the facility entrance built into the mountainside. Arctic Crown had been constructed in 1983 as a last resort weapons platform during the Soviet crisis. Officially decommissioned in 1991, it remained on the Pentagon's watch list for periodic security sweeps. The steel door opened to her biometric scan. Inside, concrete tunnels stretched into darkness, emergency lighting casting everything in sickly yellow. The air smelled of dust and abandonment. Central Command untouched, Diana reported, examining decades-old computer terminals. Running diagnostics now. She inserted a drive, pulling system logs while the 3 contractors descended to check lower levels. That's when things went wrong. Jackson struck her from behind before she heard him return. The world tilted, pain exploding across her skull. She rolled, reaching for her sidearm, but he already had his weapon drawn. Sorry, Lieutenant. Change of plans. Rivera and Bennett emerged from the shadows, weapons trained on her. Blood trickled down Diana's face where the rifle butt had connected. What is this? She demanded, calculating angles, distances. Simple economics, Rivera said. We're being paid for something this facility contains. You just provided the access codes. Bennett worked at her terminal, swapping drives. Sentinel protocols are worth millions on the black market. Diana shifted her weight slowly. Kane will know something's wrong the moment I miss check-in. Jackson smiled without humor. By then, we'll be gone. And you'll be written off as a training accident. She moved for her ankle knife. Rivera's boot caught her ribs with professional precision. Bone cracked. The world became white agony. They dragged her outside into the storm. The cliff edge loomed through swirling snow, a 1,000-foot drop to the valley floor. Diana fought, but with cracked ribs and outnumbered, her struggles proved futile. You think this ends with me? She gasped. It ends with an unfortunate accident, Jackson replied. Then Rivera shoved her over the edge. The fall, the impact, the impossible survival. Now Diana clung to the ledge, forcing her training to override the pain. She relocated her dislocated shoulder with a sickening pop, muffling her scream against her sleeve. Then she examined the rock face with tactical assessment. Old metal pitons protruded from the stone every 15 feet. Rangers had trained here decades ago, leaving permanent anchor points for covert approaches. A route invisible to satellite observation, designed for exactly this scenario. She began climbing. Each movement awakened fresh agony. Blood froze against her skin. The wind threatened to tear her loose, but rage drove her upward, handhold by handhold, using the ancient ranger route like a ladder from hell. At a protected outcropping, she discovered what the rangers had left behind: a weatherproof ammunition can containing survival gear and a Colt 1911 pistol wrapped in oiled cloth. 4 decades old but functional, Diana bound her ribs, swallowed ancient painkillers, and checked the weapon. 7 rounds plus 1 spare magazine. Not much, but more than Jackson expected. She kept climbing. By dawn, she'd ascended 200 feet. By midday, she reached the summit approach, 50 yards from the facility entrance. Thin smoke rose from ventilation ducts. They hadn't left, they were still inside. She found a maintenance hatch, bypassed the electronic lock using emergency protocols, and slipped into a utility corridor. Security monitors showed Jackson and Bennett in the lowest storage level, removing shielding from a large container. Rivera stood guard. Diana watched through the camera feed as they exposed the device inside. Cylindrical, covered in antenna arrays. An EMP generator, Cold War technology capable of disabling the eastern seaboard's power grid. Confirmation on the package, Jackson spoke into a satellite phone. Prototype XM-27, complete and operational. Diana understood immediately. This wasn't about access codes. They were stealing a strategic weapon, likely for foreign buyers. An extraction team was coming. She couldn't let that happen. Moving through the facility, she manipulated environmental controls, creating false alarms in outlying sections. When Rivera separated to investigate, she ambushed him in a narrow corridor. Their fight was brutal and brief. He slumped unconscious, secured with communications wiring. 1 down, 2 to go. She triggered more alarms, forcing Jackson and Bennett to evacuate with the EMP container. As they approached her position, she fired the Colt twice. Bennett went down wounded. Jackson dove for cover. "Blackwood!" Jackson's voice echoed with genuine shock. "That's impossible." "You should have checked the body," Diana called back, already relocating. The standoff intensified. She fired again, catching Bennett in the leg. Jackson returned fire, bullets shattering concrete inches from her head. But she had position, and she had purpose. When Bennett tried to activate a hidden escape tunnel, Diana made her final play. She accessed the facility's emergency terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Protocol 7, she announced calmly. "Self-destruct sequence. This entire level collapses in 60 seconds unless you surrender." Jackson froze, recognizing the protocol immediately. It would bury them all, destroy the technology, eliminate the threat. "You'd die to stop us?" he asked. "I'd die preventing treason," Diana corrected. "Whatever conspiracies you believe, selling American weapons to foreign entities crosses the line." For a moment, calculation warred with ideology in Jackson's expression. Then practicality won. "Stand down," he ordered Bennett, dropping his weapon. Gunfire erupted from the main corridor. Kane's extraction team had breached the facility, moving to secure the area with professional efficiency. The colonel himself appeared in the doorway, tactical team behind him. Despite her injuries and exhaustion, Diana maintained military posture. "Sir, Lieutenant Cross reporting. Package secure. 3 hostiles contained." Kane's weathered face revealed nothing, but his hand steadied her when she staggered. "At ease, Lieutenant. Medical team is inbound. You've done enough." The words broke something inside her. She'd survived the impossible. climbed back from certain death, stopped a catastrophic security breach, and Kane's simple acknowledgement carried more weight than any medal. The facility, she managed. Secondary tunnel system. Unknown extent. Already identified. Teams are securing all exits. Kane's expression darkened. Nothing leaves this mountain. As medics loaded her onto a stretcher, Diana caught Jackson watching her with something approaching respect. "You climb back up," he said quietly. "With broken ribs. That shouldn't be possible." "I'm hard to kill," she replied. 3 weeks later, Diana sat in Kane's office at Pentagon headquarters, still healing, but cleared for limited duty. The colonel placed a file on the desk between them. NSC confirmed foreign state involvement. Multiple intelligence services using domestic extremists as proxies. Jackson's network targeted 5 facilities simultaneously. Diana absorbed this. How many packages were lost? 2. Bioweapon delivery system and orbital strike platform schematics, both supposedly decommissioned 30 years ago. Kane's jaw tightened. Your actions prevented the worst loss. Why maintain these systems at all? Diana asked the question that had haunted her since the cliff. The Cold War ended decades ago. Kane studied her carefully. Institutional inertia, bureaucratic preservation instinct. Once something enters the black budget, it develops constituencies that resist change. He paused. But that's changing now. Your mission exposed vulnerabilities we can no longer ignore. He slid papers across the desk. You're being reassigned, Executive Officer of the newly formed Rapid Response Division. We're building institutional countermeasures against similar infiltration attempts, building it from scratch, and you're going to lead the operational architecture. Diana read the orders, noting the exceptional resources allocated. Presidential priority, bypassing normal bureaucratic constraints. Jackson claimed these weapons were maintained for domestic use, she said carefully. Population control rather than foreign threats. Was he right? Kane's expression hardened. He was fed carefully crafted disinformation designed to exploit his psychological profile. Classic radicalization methodology. Take legitimate institutional failures, add conspiracy theories, create traitors from patriots. But were the systems maintained for contingency scenarios, including domestic deployment? The colonel's silence confirmed what official briefings never would. Prudent military planning included worst-case scenarios across all threat spectrums. Oversight had failed, allowing systems to persist beyond strategic justification. Your new division prevents this from happening again, Kane finally said. Not just responding to breaches, but identifying vulnerabilities before they're exploited. Building the security architecture our evolved threat environment requires. Diana accepted the assignment with clear understanding of its weight. Jackson and his conspirators had miscalculated catastrophically. They'd pushed her off that cliff believing nature would finish their mission. Instead, they'd created the architect of their own defeat. The mountain that should have witnessed her death had become her crucible. The impossible climb back up with broken bones and failing strength had forged understanding of evolved threats and institutional resilience. Now that knowledge would inform new security protocols protecting against sophisticated psychological warfare targeting cleared personnel. The lesson was clear. Individual capability required institutional support to achieve lasting effectiveness. As Diana departed Kane's office, new assignments secured and purpose refined, she reflected on the fundamental truth the conspirators had missed. They'd seen vulnerability in aging facilities and absent oversight. What they'd failed to recognize was evolutionary opportunity. They'd tried to bury her on that mountain. Instead, they'd given her the high ground. 6 months later, Lieutenant Commander Diana Cross stood before the assembled personnel of Rapid Response Division, the promotion and expanded authority reflecting both her performance and the division's elevated importance. The team she'd built combined the best tactical operators with sophisticated counterintelligence capabilities, creating an integrated response system against hybrid warfare threats. Kane observed from the back of the briefing room as Diana outlined current operations against identified sleeper networks. 43 additional compromised individuals had been identified using psychological profiling derived from Jackson's interrogation. Each represented a success story, intervention preventing betrayal rather than punishing it afterward. The stolen technologies remained at large, but countermeasures were being developed. International pressure had identified some transfer points, though recovery remained unlikely. The focus had shifted toward prevention and institutional reform. After the briefing, Kane pulled Diana aside. "General Lawrence wants to meet with you. Chairman of Joint Chiefs doesn't make social calls." The meeting occurred 2 days later in a secure Pentagon conference room. Lawrence, at 71, carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd shaped military policy for decades. "Commander Cross, your division's performance exceeds projections. The President has been personally briefed on your countermeasure protocols." Diana maintained professional neutrality despite the implications. Presidential attention meant her work had reached the highest levels of national security consideration. What happened at Sentinel Ridge exposed institutional failure beyond the immediate breach, Lawrence continued. Systems maintained without adequate oversight or strategic justification. That's changed now, largely because of your experience and recommendations. He leaned forward. You climbed back up that mountain with injuries that should have been fatal. That determination, combined with tactical excellence and strategic understanding, represents exactly what this evolving threat environment requires. The chairman stood, extending his hand. "Keep building, Commander. The security architecture you're creating may prove decisive against threats we're only beginning to understand." After Lawrence departed, Diana found herself contemplating the journey from that frozen ledge to this moment. What began with betrayal and near death had expanded into fundamental reformation of how America protected its most sensitive capabilities. Jackson had believed he was defending constitutional principles against internal corruption. His handlers had exploited that belief, turning patriotism into a weapon against the nation it was meant to protect. The sophistication of that psychological warfare represented evolved threats requiring evolved responses. Diana's division embodied that response. Not merely tactical reaction, but institutional resilience against sophisticated attacks targeting the human vulnerabilities within security systems. The conspirators had made one fatal error. They'd assumed pushing her off that cliff would eliminate the threat she represented. Instead, they'd created something far more dangerous to their objectives, a survivor who understood both tactical and strategic dimensions of hybrid warfare, empowered to build countermeasures at institutional scale. The mountain they'd chosen as her grave had become monument to adaptation and resilience. The woman they'd tried to bury had returned carrying lessons that would strengthen national security architecture for generations. They'd given her the fall, expecting gravity to finish their mission. She'd turned it into wings.